Well, it's Dr. Mouse, part 2 of our Charlotte Web series. We're going to read chapter 2 today. Yesterday I asked you for we talked about a couple of things. We talked about the setting. Remember the settings where the story takes place. And we look at the comments. The setting takes place in a farm, right? And I always imagine the story taking place about 40, 50, 60 years ago, maybe the 1950s, 1960s. And then I also asked you to reflect on one of the quotes, and one of the quotes was, "This is the most terrible case of injustice I have ever heard of." We're talking about they were going to kill the runt, Wilbur, and a lot of you were very passionate about what you said. A lot of you said it's injustice to kill something that, like a pig that was innocent, and everyone has a right to live. So it was really interesting. A little cup of coffee this morning, which is true, right? But you also have to think of the perspective of Mr. Arable, who had to spend money to feed the pig, and if he wasn't going to produce anything, it's kind of a compromise. And we also think about, a lot of things, I guess. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. So this is chapter 2. So just a recap of chapter 1. Mr. Arable let Fern keep the pig. Here's a picture of her feeding the pig with a bottle. Now in this chapter, we're going to notice that Wilbur, it's getting a little bit bigger. All right, well, let's begin. Chapter 2, Fern. Fern loved Wilbur more than anything. She loved to stroke him, to feed him, to put him to bed. Every morning, as soon as she got up, she warmed his milk, tied his bib on, and held his bottle for him. Every afternoon, when the school bus stopped in front of her house, she jumped out and ran to the kitchen to fix another bottle for him. She fed him again at supper time, and again just before going to bed. Mrs. Arable gave him a feeding around noontime each day when Fern was away in school. Wilbur loved his milk, and he was never happier when Fern was warming up the bottle for him. He would stand and gaze up at her with adoring eyes. Sounds like a little baby. For the first few days of his life, Wilbur was allowed to live in a box near the stove in the kitchen. Then, when Mrs. Arable complained, he was to move to a bigger box in the woodshed. After 2 weeks of age, he was moved outdoors. It was apple blossom time, and the days were getting warmer. Mr. Arable fixed a small yard especially for Wilbur under an apple tree, and gave him a large wooden box full of straw, with a doorway cut in it so he could walk in and out as he pleased. "Won't he be cold at night?" asked Fern. "No," said her father. "You watch and see what he does." Carrying a bottle of milk, Fern sat down under the apple tree inside the yard. Wilbur ran to her, and she held the bottle for him while he sucked. When he had finished the last drop, he grunted and walked sleepily into the box. Fern peered through the door. The word peer just means to look. Wilbur was poking the straw with his snout. In a short time, he had dug a tunnel in the straw. He crawled into the tunnel and disappeared from sight. Completely covered with straw, Fern was enchanted. It relieved her mind to know that her baby would sleep covered up and would stay warm. There's little Fern, and there's Wilbur, right? So he's getting big. And the dad kind of told Fern that he's going to be destructive, so we're going to find out what happens. Can he save baby forever? Nope. Every morning after breakfast, Wilbur walked out on the road with Fern and waited till the bus came. She would wave goodbye to him, and he would stand and watch the bus until it vanished around a turn. Vanish just means what? To disappear, right? While Fern was in school, Wilbur was shut up inside his yard. But as soon as he got home in the afternoon, she would take him out and he would follow her around the place. If she went into the house, Wilbur went too. If she went upstairs, guess what? Wilbur would wait at the bottom step until she came down again. If she took her doll for a walk in the doll carriage, Wilbur followed along. Sometimes on these journeys, Wilbur would get tired, and Fern would pick him up and put him in the carriage alongside the doll. He liked this, and he was very tired. He would close his eyes, and he would fall asleep under the doll's blanket. He looked cute when his eyes were closed because his lashes were long. The doll would close her eyes too, and Fern would wheel the carriage very slowly and smoothly so that not to wake her infant. There's a picture. Is he a little baby, acting like a little baby? All right. Is he going to stay a baby for much longer? Nope. One afternoon, Fern and Avery put on bathing suits and went down to the brook for a swim. Wilbur tagged along at Fern's heels. When she waded into the brook, Wilbur waded in with her. He found the water quite cold, too cold for his liking. So while the children swam and played and splashed water at each other, Wilbur amused himself in the mud along the edge of the brook, where it was warm and moist and delightfully sticky and oozy. Right? Do pigs like dirt that's sticky and oozy?
Yeah.
I would say yes, yeah. Every day was a happy day, and every night was peaceful. Wilbur was what the farmers call a spring pig, which simply means that he was born in springtime. When he was 5 weeks old, Mr. Arable said he was now big enough to sell and would have to be sold. Uh-oh. Fern broke down and wept. Wept is just another word for cry. But her father was firm about it. Wilbur's appetite had increased. He was beginning to eat scraps of food in addition to milk. Mr. Arable was not willing to provide for him any longer. He had already sold Wilbur's 10 brothers and sisters. He's got to go, Fern, he said. You have your fun raising a baby pig, but Wilbur is not a baby any longer, and he has got to be sold. Call up the Zuckerman, suggested Mrs. Arable to Fern. Your Uncle Homer sometimes raises a pig, and if Wilbur goes there to live, you can walk down the road and visit him as often as you like. So why doesn't Mr. Arable want Wilbur anymore, right? Because it's costing him too much money, right? So he's just thinking, Fern, you had your fun. Well, we'll see. Well, said, how much money should I ask for him? Fern wanted to know. Well, said her father, he's a runt. Tell your Uncle Homer you got a pig you'll sell for $6 and see what he says. It was soon arranged. Fern phoned and got her Aunt Edith, and her Aunt Edith hollered for Uncle Homer. And Uncle Homer came in from the barn and walked to Fern. When he heard that the price was only $6, he said he would buy the pig. Next day, Wilbur was taken from his home under the apple tree, and he went to live in a manure pile in the cellar of the Zuckerman's barn. All right, that is the end of chapter 2. All right, so let's talk about this, right? Is a lot of work taking care of an animal, right? So you think about the dog or a cat you have to feed it, you have to look after it, you have to make sure it has all its shots, right? And so Fern was pretty responsible taking care of Wilbur, but the dad was like, enough is enough, it's getting bigger, it's getting destructive, and they wanted to sell it. So what was the solution? Because Fern wept? Yeah, right? So the solution to that problem was they were going to have the uncle buy it, and because the uncle buys or raises pigs, then Fern could still visit and take care of it, right? So what do you think is going to happen, right? Because what do we notice? Is Wilbur getting bigger and bigger? Is he going to get more and more destructive? Absolutely, right? So we'll stay into, maybe next week we will talk about chapter 3. For those little ones, when we talk about the setting was a farm, right? Why don't you draw a picture where you think Wilbur lives, right? We know it's in a farm. We know it's in the countryside, right? Well, so what does that mean? Is there tall buildings? No, right? Is there dirt roads and trees and hay and all that fun stuff? Absolutely, right? And so for the older ones, right? I want you to start thinking about transition, right? You think about your own life. How maybe your parents treated you differently when you're in first grade as compared to third grade, or when you're in fourth grade as you get older into sixth grade, right? Because Charlotte Webb is really kind of a growing up, right? And so I want you to start thinking about those things as we kind of read along. All right, Bobcat Nation, it was fun while it lasted. We miss you. We will see you soon. And that's a picture of my little Wilbur. It's a wild cat that hunts doves at night. All right. Thank you, Bobcat Nation. Have a good one. Peace out. Be safe, be respectful, and be responsible.